Thinking of standing up, it's better because I do not want to hide behind the screen. So, I will talk about the theory of communism in ancient Greek political thought. The theory of communism existed in ancient Greece. We can find an interesting analysis of this political system in Plato's Republic and Laws, and in Aristotle's Politics. We can also find traces of the so-called pre-Marxist or primitive idea of communism in previous Hellenic eras, even at the beginning of the history of the Hellenic nation. Historical testimonies exist, for instance, in the work of Herodotus, who mentions three tribes, Agathyrsi, Nasamones, and Avseres, that had a kind of communal ownership, and more particularly, women were common to all men. Aristotle also mentions in his Politics that some of the people of Upper Libya have their wives in common, yet the children born are divided among them according to their personal resemblances. There are testimonies about a kind of communism that the Pythagoreans had. More specifically, there is a testimony from Timaeus of Tauromenium or Taormina that provides information about the practice of communism in the Pythagorean community. According to the fragment 77, it seems that the upper levels of the Pythagorean society put into practice the concept kina ta philon, which means the possessions of friends are common. This practice was initiated by Pythagoras himself, and we can presume that it ended with his death. This communistic practice was a part of the philosophical ideas of the Pythagoreans, which promoted the importance of harmony on all levels of existence. In the 5th century before Common Era, the idea of communism reappeared in the political sphere and continued being popular in the 4th century too. According to Aristotle, many people of his time considered communism as the best solution to the problems that most polis had. We can see a testimony of this political tendency in Aristophanes' Ecclesiazuse, in which Praxagora says the following: "Let none contradict nor interrupt me until I have explained my plan. I want all to have a share of everything, and all property to be in common. There will no longer be either rich or poor. No longer shall we see one man harvesting vast tracts of land, while another has not ground enough to be buried in, nor one man surround himself with a whole army of slaves, while another has not a single attendant. I intend that there shall only be one and the same condition of life for all." Plato observed this political tendency of his era and decided to incorporate it in his political philosophy, the popular idea of communism. In the 3rd book of the Republic, Plato presents his radical ideas on the abolition of private property and private life of the guardians. The class of the guardians, which is split into two classes, the complete guardians, Phylakes Pantelis, and the auxiliaris guardians, Phylakes Epicuri, is responsible for the governance of Callipolis. The complete guardians, or philosopher kings and queens, are the rulers, and the auxiliaris guardians offer a military service and a complementary work to the ruler's political action. The 3rd class of the Callipolis, the producers, Demiurgi, have no political rights, and their tasks are limited to trade, agriculture, and various other arts. The guardians live a public life dedicated to the right governance of the Callipolis, which presupposes their absolute devotion and demands the sacrifice of their private life. For the success of this public life, Plato takes the following measures. He suggests the prohibition of private property and of gold and silver for both the complete and auxiliaris guardians. It is apparent that in Plato's political thought, political power and wealth are incompatible. If both complete and auxiliaris guardians aim at the accumulation of wealth, properties, and other assets, selfishness will become dominant in them and will alienate them and ward them off their real purpose, which is the right exercise of politics. The guardians should live in appropriately formed military houses and participate in mandatory common meals. In order to obtain the necessary things for their survival, They receive a salary for their guardianship, miston tis phylakis, from the producers. The communal life of the guardians is completed with having their wives and children in common. Κοινωνία γυναικών και παιδών. Plato proposes in the fifth book of the Republic a radical but necessary reformation of the guardian's family in order to be able to correspond properly to their public life. The traditional form of the family is responsible for many problems and strife in the society. He characterizes the common ownership of women and children as the highest good, μέγιστον αγαθών, for the society, and he supports the idea that it will protect the two classes of the guardians from the phenomenon of privatization, idiosis, which according to his opinion is responsible for disruptions, strife, and for the cultivation of unfair competition and of hostility and rivalry among the citizens. The Athenian philosopher sees another benefit in the radical reformation of the family, the transformation of the guardians into one big public family in which every member considers the rest as relatives. The public family, in combination with the prohibition of private property, leads to the possession of common pleasures and pains, λύπηστε και ειδονής κοινωνίαν, which is an ideal condition for the classes of the guardians since they will have common conception for life and all things, will have a common emotional attitude, and will act in a collective way, like if they were one human being. At this point, we can observe that Plato restricts communism only to the two classes of the guardians, the auxiliaries and the complete ones. The third class, the producers, who have no political rights and do not take part in the public and political life, can have private property and the traditional form of family. Communism in the Republic is only for the politicians, for the rulers, and not for the ruled ones, not for the simple citizens. Plato considers communism as an ideal way of life only for the guardians of the Callipolis, because he wants to point out the factional role that communism has in the exercise of politics. Communism, according to Plato, acts as a protective measure for the guardians or for the politicians in general, and will protect them from the ethical and political corruption that private property and family could cause in their conscience by turning them into possessive and self-centered personalities. On the contrary, the class of the producers does not participate in the political life, has no political rights, and it is excluded from the public sphere. Thus, the producers are free to live a private life with private property and family. A question that arises here is the following. Is truly communism a good choice for the realistic society? Plato presents the application of communism in ideal conditions, in a utopian society, the perfect Callipolis, in which perfect beings, the two classes of the guardians, live and rule the producers. Only perfect beings who have reached the highest levels of ethical and spiritual perfection are able to accept the condition of communal ownership. But are the realistic politicians, who are ordinary people with weaknesses and subject to corruption, able to accept communal ownership? Is the whole body of citizens able to live under the conditions of communism? The answer is no, and Plato expressed his negative view on communism in his last work, The Laws. More specifically, in the fifth book of the Laws, he repeats the suggestion he had done in the Republic, and that the perfect polis, or society, is the one that is under the regime of communism and has abolished any kind of private element. Then, Plato completely rejects this idea and admits that this extreme communality and equality is utopian condition that only gods or children of gods can live in, and could never be implemented in a realistic society. We can see that Plato has a negative view on the reappearance of communism in his era, and he attempts both in the Republic and the Laws to show its utopian and unrealistic character. Communism was ideal for the early and archaic Greek societies, but for the societies of Plato's era is not suitable. Aristotle expresses as well serious objections regarding the value of communism in human society in the second book of his Politics. he attempts a very interesting explanation why the communal life is not suitable for the human society of his era. First, Aristotle criticizes Plato's views on the communal life of the two classes of the guardians in the Republic. He questions the beneficial value of communal ownership, and he suggests that it could be proved exceptionally harmful for Callipolis. He considers the communal ownership of women and children as very problematic and unable to be implemented in realistic conditions. Although he suggests that communism might be more beneficial to the class of producers and could help them to be more loyal and obey the rulers, he eventually states that living under communism is very difficult for every society and can cause many problems. One of the serious and negative consequences is the loss of multitude, which can lead to the total destruction of a society. Multitude, according to Aristotle, is the nature of polis, of a human society, and with the application of communal ownership, this nature is violated. Communism refutes the idea of common life, συζήν, of many people together, and promotes the idea of converting multitude to an absolute uniform unity. This promotion of absolute uniform unity, according to Aristotle, threatens another natural element that the human society has, that is diversity, multiplicity, pluralism. The absolute equality and unity can eliminate any kind of diversity in the human society and thus lead to the absolute destruction. He also states that absolute unity can threaten self-sufficiency of the polis, since it turns the whole body of citizens into one man. It eliminates the power of the many and lowers it to the level of one man's power. Another important argument that Aristotle uses to support his opposition to communism is based on the psychology of human nature. What is common to all citizens will not have the care and attention it deserves. He states, «Οίκης τα γάρ επιμελίας την χάνει το πλοίς των κοινών, των γάρ ιδίων μάλιστα φροντίζουσιν, των δε κοινών ήτων», which means property that is common to the greatest number of owners receives the least attention. Men care most for their private possessions and for what they own in common less. The human psychology leads by nature the individual to neglect the duties that are common and shared with others, and to expect others to take care of them. The metathesis of one's responsibilities to other individuals is the result of the application of communism and can cause a serious malfunction in the social life. The human being, according to Aristotle, can care and be responsible only for the things that belong to his or her private property. He clearly states that «Δύο γαρέστην αμάλιστα ποιοί κοίδεστε τους ανθρώπους και φιλήν, το τε ίδιον και το αγαπητόν», which means «For there are two things that most cause men to care for and to love each other, the sense of ownership and the sense of preciousness». Communism, with the application of absolute uniform unity and equality, threatens the concord and friendship in the society and will eventually cause civil strife and hostility. The love we feel for something private that belongs to us and the pleasure that comes from this possession is, according to Aristotle, physikon, a natural instinct. He also believes that with the existence of private property, prudence and generosity are promoted. The individual learns how to respect and abstain from what belongs to others, and also learns how to offer a portion of his or her possessions to those who are in need. Private property sets measures in human behavior, cultivates self-control, and forms a generous character. For this reason, in communism, both prudence and generosity are impossible to exist. Because, as Aristotle points out, ούτε γαρ έστε φανερός ελευθέριος ον, ούτε πράξη πράξην ελευθέριον ουδεμίαν, εν τη γαρ χρήση των κτημάτων, το της ελευθεριότητος έργων εστί, which means for one will not be able to display liberality, nor perform a single liberal action, since the active exercise of liberality takes place in the use of possessions. However, Aristotle believes that some elements of communism could be beneficial for the human society. He suggests a mixed system which combines the positive elements of both communism and private property, and which sets limits to both of them. As an example, he mentions the property of land, and he explains that it would be more efficient and would protect from strife if each individual holds and takes care of his own piece of land, but share with others the goods he produces, so they can be common according to the proverb, kinata philon, the possessions of friends are common. Aristotle attempts to show to his contemporaries that communism is not a panacea for the problems that various polis face. According to his opinion, the basic cause of the problem is the wickedness of people and not the absence of communism. By bringing back a system that existed in older societies and was eventually abandoned is not the right solution. Aristotle points out that although there are some positive elements in communism, those who want to bring back this system should be aware of the many good things that they are going to lose. Life under the absolute communism that applies a uniform equality and unity is unbearable and impossible to be good. The unity in a polis should have a limit if we want to avoid the complete destruction of the society. Both Plato and Aristotle are negative towards the tendency of their era that supported the comeback of the ancient communistic system. Plato absolutely rejects communal ownership for the realistic societies, considering this system as totally unsuitable for human beings. Aristotle rejects communism as well, although he admits that a mixed system of private property and communal ownership could be beneficial for the societies of his era. But he is absolutely opposed to the application of an absolute communistic system that will promote an extreme uniform unity and equality that will threaten the prosperity of society and eventually destroy it. Thank you very much for your attention.